And joining us on the phone this morning, we have Congresswoman Yvette Herrell back with us. Good morning, ma'am. How you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's always glad to have you join us here on the radio this morning. I know a lot's happened since we last spoke. Russia went to war and and everything else here. So a lot's happened since the last time we talked.
It really has. I mean, it's just, between the, what's happening, like you said, over in Russia with the Ukrainians, with the State of the Union, and just, policies that are being introduced and just all kinds of stuff. So, yeah, never a dull moment for sure.
Absolutely. So let's, before we kind of get into, I want to talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that you guys are dealing with. But as far as what's going on in Congress from the Russia perspective, what's some of the things you're seeing coming across your desk, or some of the rumblings they're talking about in Congress there?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest one, and I believe several members of Congress were hoping the president would have addressed this at the State of the Union, is energy independence, Mike. I mean, that is such a key component to not only keeping Americans safe, keeping our country safe and our allies safe, but that is the fastest and easiest way I believe we could have really kind of put a plug in this whole thing. I'm not saying it would have stopped the invasion, but I'm saying we are still buying oil from Russia today. I mean, we are still buying, in fact, we've increased our purchases up to over 300,000 barrels. And what's interesting to me is, I heard Biden say that he wants to tap our reserves, but what I think the American people do not know is our reserves have never been lower than they are right now.
Wow.
And this makes no sense, because we have the ability to be energy independent. We saw that just a year and a half ago.
We were 2 years ago, and now we're not.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. And so they keep talking about, the environment and climate and all this, but why is it that we will buy oil from a country that doesn't have the environmental regulations that we have?
Sure.
And yet somehow that's going to, it is such a hypocrisy and so dumb. But really, for me, the biggest thing that I think Congress is talking about is, number one, is definitely oil energy independence, but also looking at the bigger picture, going, look, we need to become oil or energy independent, and let's secure our southern border. Now we have people flowing across the border. We've talked about this so many times. We don't even know who's coming into our country, and yet we continue just to worry about other things that are not as pressing to the American people. People want to know about the cost of gas, prices of food, supplies, the wait times now on supply chains, and all these type of things. And yet we didn't hear any of that from this administration the other night. And while I do appreciate that this administration is working with NATO and they are working together to put some of the sanctions in place, I think there was a bigger hope that we would have talked more about energy.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. This is something that, and I think the general public, we see things like, because we hear that the pipeline that got closed down, and now they're saying, like you said, we're still buying oil from Russia, and you said, tap into reserves and all of this, and you're absolutely right that it's turn the pipeline back on, start drilling again. That's an easy fix, and it's all good for America and bad for our enemies right now, and or the people that aren't for us, and so I don't understand why that's not even being considered. That's the part that's, and I'm sure a lot of other people see that, and yourself as well are shaking your head or scratching your head about this.
Well, exactly. And I think a lot of people, I believe this last year has given people an opportunity to really kind of get engaged and see what is going on in terms of policy and coming out of Washington, D.C. And I believe it has been an easy transition to look at the hypocrisy and then understand, like you just mentioned, that executive order that killed the Keystone XL pipeline, the 11,000 jobs with that, and then just chipping away and vilifying our energy industry, no lease sales on federal lands for over a year. I mean, this makes no sense, and it just continues to give the industry itself just the instability of not knowing what this administration is going to do, and how we can even think about, the other night when he said, he wants to give all the government vehicles, he wants them all electric. Well, that's just a great idea, except for the lithium that he needs for those batteries is largely controlled by China, and yet we talk about these things, and yet they still do not seem to understand that child slave labor for these critical minerals, and that is, we're not supportive of that. We've got the ability to do these things, to mine these minerals, hard rock mining, energy, and liquid natural gas, everything else, right here at home. And yet we don't see any movement in this administration to make America stronger.
Sure. Well, and here's the part that, and a matter of fact, I saw, I think you had something on, I saw something on Twitter that I believe you shared maybe yesterday or something like that. And it was basically talking about, look, if people want to get serious about energy here and doing it right, and we talk, because right now it's very partisan, either if you're a liberal, right, oil and gas is the devil. If you're conservative, it's the savior. And I'm being very broad here, but that's kind of the ideology of this. And I remember you put a post in saying something to the effect is like, if you're serious about it, let's bring all parties to the table, including Elon Musk, everybody, and start talking. And then I started reading the comments, and that's a dumb idea, but I did it anyway. And
I never read them.
you're wiser for it. But what people are saying, and it's just like, I don't get it. Everyone, do people not realize that in today's world, in a technology we currently live in and everything we have, and I don't see that changing in my lifetime, and who knows, I'm hoping I'm wrong, but technology, it's great, all electric and being all this, in concept, in theory, that sounds wonderful. Sure, we love this perfect world where everything gets, but do they not realize that no matter what form of technology used to make clean fuel, oil and gas has a vital role in that. It doesn't, and everything else in your life does. Every piece of plastic matter of fact, the phones and tablets that everyone's complaining about everything on, oil and gas has a part in that too. That's the part that doesn't get me. It's like, you realize you're biting the hand that feeds you because you're being promised or want ideas that really aren't technologically available to us yet. In theory, that's wonderful, but till you figure out how to make plastic with something that doesn't require petroleum-based products, you're not going to fix anything. And that's and that's what I'm saying is it all plays a role. And until you can get a car that goes 400 miles on a charge or a tank of gas consistently, you're never going to replace oil and gas with that car. You're just not going to do that.
That's right. And actually, you nailed it. And the demand for energy is not going to go away. And that's what I think is the missing link, if you will. There's some mindset that people have this idea that fossil fuels and energy as we know it, you and I talk about it, is just such a bad thing. It's just so disruptive. And yet they don't even realize how many things have like you said, petroleum-based product, whether it's the plastic, clothing, makeup, medical equipment. It's so many items that we take advantage of every single day.
Absolutely.
And like you said, I think yes, everybody wants clean air, clean water, clean environment, and we've seen our energy industry, our ag industry, and others make huge strides to eliminate, the amount of emissions, et cetera, and to protect our environment. We've done an amazing job in this nation, and yet we are still being vilified. And like you said, and this is what people need to understand: the idea of what they're coming up to, an all green everything. We don't even have the technology. We don't have the capability. Mm-hmm. We don't have the way to do that. And you still have to have those hard rock minerals, those rare earth minerals, lithium, all these things. You still have to have all of these natural resources to go into making it green. For instance, like the wind towers, the windmills. There's 6,000 pounds of copper in each one of those. That's, there is no way to continue to move the green, move towards a green environment if we don't continue to keep the fossil fuel industry, the natural resources, hard rock mining. That's all playing a vital role.
Sure.
And yet there's, you just can't have all or none. And I think the energy industry, as we know it, we're way willing to have those conversations and advance technology, and so many of our companies have done so. But
Sure.
It just makes no sense. And I kind of laugh, I remember just the other day talking to a couple of House members from New Mexico that are obviously pro-energy, pro-oil and gas. But, as much as the governor and others just want the Green New Deal in New Mexico and want all green by a certain date, none of them were pushing back and giving those capital outlay dollars back to the energy sector that put those dollars at their disposal for capital outlay projects. I think this year the House members got almost $2 million apiece, and the Senate members got even more in the House,
Wow.
the New Mexico legislature. And I didn't hear one Democrat saying, I'm not going to spend this. This comes from that horrible industry. They sure are good at spending the money and making everybody's lives miserable. And it's kind of like they want their cake and eat it too. And I think that's where we're missing the mark. We're not having an honest conversation about how important energy is to our state and to our nation.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what you were trying to say online, and that's the point I was making. It's like the arguments that people are trying to, again, it's just partisan. I'm not listening to you because you're a Republican, and I'm like, I'm so tired of that ideology, and every person that claims to be a Democrat or liberal out there, we need partisan, we need to work together, and then when that actually is brought up, they're like, oh, well, now. You know what I mean? And that's, I feel like that's what's going on is people, and if someone's going to say, duh, this isn't new, but everyone's talking out of both two ends of their mouth here. And that's
right.
I think to the general public, that's more upsetting than anything,
It is. And I think Americans and New Mexicans certainly are just understanding just just such hypocrisy that's coming out. Here's what I think. For all the people that are really all in for all green and they want to get completely rid of fossil fuels, then I would submit to them, then stop using anything in your life that has to do with the fossil fuel. Just let it go.
Yeah.
So that's earphones, that's cell phones, that's tablets, that's clothing, that's makeup, that's your car, give everything up, because like you mentioned just a minute ago, in most cases, we don't have another product to take the place of, they're doing it in food. Now we can get, hamburgers that are made of plant-based, material, which is fine.
Sure.
But we're not there yet when it comes to the technology industry. We do not have a way to do it. So, I would say, are you ready to pull people off of ventilating machines because we know they are made with petroleum product? Are we ready to stop giving vaccines because we know that all those syringes are touched by petroleum product? And honestly, a lot of medications have some type of petroleum product byproduct in them. So, it's kind of like, then put your money where your mouth is and give up everything that you say you don't like.
Yeah.
And let's see how that goes.
Yeah, I get you want to be an activist, sure, but you don't want to know how the sausage is made. That's kind of, and that's the ideology is, look, how the sausage made. We see the end product. We see all the good things that happen, but we don't want to know how the sausage made, or they're trying to get it. And that's the part that makes, we need to educate everybody. And I think if people realized the impact that it had and truly realized it and didn't get caught up in all the misinformation that's really out there. Yeah. I think people would have at least we could all sit at a table and say, okay, we want these things. And to be honest, like you said earlier, if you really are an activist and want and you're doing this, and we talk about oil and gas, then why are you not supporting us doing? Because regardless, you're going to need to drive your car, you're going to need to do your hair, you're going to need to put on clothes, you're going to need to take your meds, you're going to do all those things. Why not back the people that are trying to be more environmentally conscious, like the regulations, things we have here, like you said? Go tell Russia to be cleaner about their energy. Go tell China to be cleaner about their energy and see how that works out for you.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
So we're instead of supporting that, let's stop buying that stuff and start doing it here and in the clean ways and building our own people and economy and things like that. But we're so, and it seems like, I'm trying to, I don't hate doing this, but it seems like a Democrat ideology that we want to outsource all this, and I'm like, why? There's no point to that in this time. I mean, this is not about, I get businesses are trying to, it's about bottom lines. That's why they go and get things made in China and all that, because they can make whatever product in China pennies on the dollar to compare to how it's made here, because we have, things like rights and responsibilities and things we do to protect people where they don't so much. And so, yeah, but most of us at the end of the day, like, I don't care as long as I got my cell phone for 500 instead of 1,000. You know what I mean? And that's
exactly. Well, and it even goes even further than that. And this is what I get very frustrated with, because this administration especially has been very good at turning the blind eye. And I'll give you some examples. For instance, we'll put the fence around the Capitol, but not secure the border. We'll put these mandates for masks or vaccines and all this on American workers, American business owners, but not on those coming across the border illegally. But here's what is really, they want all this stuff from China, but they won't address the child slave labor.
Yeah.
But here, they just turn the blind eye. And just like right now when we were talking, the demand for energy is not going to go away. And there are nations right now that are for the first time having access to liquid natural gas for cooking, for heating their homes. The mortality rate has gone down because of liquid natural gas taken into countries that had never had it before, that were still burning sticks and whatever they could find to cook and clean their homes. And are we going to just shut all that off because they can't go green? I mean, we're talking about areas in the world that do not have the infrastructure and may never have the infrastructure to go all green, have the grid and all this. So how are we going to chop off the opportunities to so many people in poverty that are now benefiting from the energy that we produce here in America and around the world? It makes no sense.
Absolutely. You're right.
We can have a whole show on this.
I know. I'm just curious. You were at the speech Tuesday night, right? In the House there sitting.
I watched it. I did not go.
Okay.
Yeah, and because magically COVID has obviously left the U.S. House of Representatives, because up until literally, and I will be honest, just a few hours before, they were first saying you had to get a ticket, you couldn't bring anybody with you, you had to have a COVID test, you had to have proof of vaccine, you had to wear the N95 mask. I mean, they had all these mandates, and they had very few people that were going to be there. Then as the day went on, they started lifting some of that, and then all of a sudden you see the House of Representatives, nobody had on a mask. That's the first time I think anybody's seen Nancy Pelosi without a mask in over a year. But you saw how sparse it was in there, and that's because they kept putting these mandates on. And I just think they started realizing this is going to look really bad on TV. Let's open some of this up. So, but I did watch it. But I did.
Okay, I didn't know if you were there, because I was curious just to kind of, get the side and what people were thinking when, what we don't see on camera. I was just kind of curious about that. But you know what? I made a joke the other day, and it's not wrong, is you can thank Russia. I think it cured COVID for us, because no one seems to care about COVID anymore now that Russia has gone and invaded Ukraine. I mean, all those things that people are mask Nazis every day is like, what? I don't mask. What are you talking about? I don't even care about that.
Right. Yeah, it just makes no sense. That's what I'm saying. It's magical how suddenly, we found the cure. And here's what's even kind of made me kind of smile is I heard an ad on TV up here in Washington, D.C. just this week that said, it's talking, I thought it was going to be for the vaccine, but it actually started talking about we need to get vaccinated for the flu, because now, suddenly now we can get the flu again. We haven't had the flu for over 2 years, but now the flu's coming back. And so, and we all can agree, look, COVID is serious, and there's always going to be a variant.
Absolutely.
And I think we all know of someone that passed away from it. And I hate that this happened, but I hate even more that they took advantage of the fear mongering, and then really stepped on people's individual freedoms and rights. And that's where they took it way too far. And
Absolutely.
I think it's backfired. I think Americans are over that.
Absolutely. Because you think about it. I mean, yes, at the beginning where we didn't know a lot of stuff, and err on the side of caution, I understand. But 2 years later, and we've got a grasp on this thing. Why isn't life exactly how it was in 2019 at this point? You know what I mean?
Right.
As far as how we live our lives. Sure, be cautious. Like, to get your vaccinations. Do, people that are who have weak immune systems and are susceptible or in the parameters that this is a deadly thing for you, then yes, those precautions need to be done for those folks. But at the same time, we can't shut down the world to do that. And now we can't help the people that really need help, because we don't have material or anything or any of the stuff we had pre-COVID is all out of sorts, and now the days of you just walking into something and grabbing, getting out is hit or miss now because of all this mess.
Yep.
And it's going to be a while before we get back to that point because it's going to take time for the world to catch up on that stuff.
It's absolutely going to take a while, and certainly with the instability in Ukraine and Russia, with everything happening now, there are so many things that are uncertain for industries. And what I thought was interesting the other night is it was, as my friend Mark Meadows said about the speech, he said it was like twice baked potatoes. There was something good, but then no follow-up. For instance, out of nowhere, President Biden said, we need to secure the border. Music to our ears, but yet then he didn't say how, or he's going to do the fence, or he's going to, put more troops on the ground, or more resources. He just went right into something else, or, the same way he talked about things that would matter to us, but then no path forward. But what he never addressed was energy. He never addressed the economy, the failed policies that have driven the inflation up to a 40-year high, the cost of gas at the pump, and like you just said, supply chains. I mean, I think in there he did try to say that somehow used car sales have driven inflation up, which makes no sense since we're not talking about manufacturing vehicles. We're talking about vehicles that were pre-owned. It just made no sense, and I think most Americans came out of there thinking, what was that? We didn't. There's no takeaway. Like there was not a path forward. And like I said, I appreciate the fact that he did speak about Ukraine, but the speech was 1 hour and 2 minutes long, and he talked literally for 30 minutes about Russia and Ukraine, which, granted, that warranted having a dialogue, but that was half his speech. And so I think Americans were waiting for, okay, so what about us? What about the home front? What about our kids, the education process, the getting people out the couch and back to the workforce? And it just kind of fell flat, I believe.
We're almost out of time, but I kind of want to talk just real quick, get back to Ukraine and Russia here. Do you guys get intel briefings at all on some of this stuff, or do they leave you in the dark on that, and that's reserved for higher echelons in the circles there?
Well, we had an unclassified briefing right after it came out, and we then had a classified briefing here, which I hate to say this out loud, but I will tell you on the classified briefings, and we had those with for some other issues, is normally then you get out of the briefing thinking, and then you're hearing it on Fox News, or you've seen it last night.
Gotcha.
So it's not super classified. Now, I am going to be on a briefing call this afternoon with members of the Armed Services Committee and a couple others. They're doing a briefing, and so I'll be anxious to see what they say, but But one thing I will tell you, Mike, that kind of made me it just made me sit down and go, wow, we have a new intern in our office, and we're always bringing in interns. And she's young. I mean, I think she's like 20 or 21 or something. But she was telling me that this was so surprising to her to see this stuff on TV, how they're showing, because she said she was like 2 when 9/11 happened. So when all that was going on, the Scud missiles, and we were kind of watching for the first time a war take place before our very eyes because of the TV and all this.
Sure.
And so she really kind of made me think, wow, there's a lot of young people who are for the first time seeing this destruction and what's happening. And I think it's alarming for them. It's alarming for me too, for all of us. But I just thought, wow, that's an interesting thought, because we just get to where we take, our technology so for granted with, TV and Facebook and all this. And I thought it was really telling. And I could tell she was gravely concerned, but she told me it's not just her, it's a lot of her friends. When they're seeing it, they just can't get over it. And
absolutely.
And I think it's maybe pushing some of our younger generations to think about, what's happening in the world and what's happening in our government, and how are these decisions being made. So but it was really an interesting dialogue I had with her, and it made me think, we just sort of take it for granted seeing this stuff because we're used to it now. So interesting turn of events.
Yeah. Well, I was just kind of wondering because like some of the things I've heard and some things I've read and have been told to me when we talk about what's going on over there, and it's not black and white like media and everyone wants to make it out to be. And what I mean by that is Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries on the planet. That's not that's a statement it's not, it's true. It is. That's why they're not in NATO. That's why, because there's a lot of corruption there. But from what I'm hearing is that Putin's just kind of gone rogue and crazy, and he's not even, like, there's reports that, like, his own intelligence community isn't really on his side on this one, even though he's kind of, he's a KGB guy through and through. But what I'm hearing is that this is more Putin than Russia. Is that kind of some of the stuff you're hearing?
I would agree that's kind of the sense that, I think Congress as a whole is kind of starting to kind of seem to feel that way just by what we're watching. And it almost feels like we're seeing a madman, if you will, that's, really gone off the deep end here. And it is, I think the sense of what you just said is absolutely correct. And that it's just almost feels like it's one guy kind of, and there's no way for us to verify, and I'll see today if they're able to verify any of this, but, we're hearing some of the Russian troops are actually just laying down their arms and saying, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
Now I feel for them if that's true, because you just don't know what their future looks like, especially under the Putin regime. But, I'd like to know, is that true? And if that's the case, I mean, this is like one man gone mad.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I will tell you, though, is what Congress is definitely talking about and has had conversations about is, what is China doing? Are they eyeing Taiwan? Is Putin going to go beyond the border of Ukraine and go further into Europe, into Poland or other countries, Finland? And here's what makes it so tough. The downside to all this social media and all this information is you don't know what's real and what isn't real, and what's accurate and what's not accurate, and that makes it tough. But I will tell you, grave concern on what is China doing. They've stayed so quiet on this. They didn't vote with the NATO partners the other day at the UN, I believe. So what is Taiwan doing? And should America, and I'm just saying, should Americans now, should this administration be looking to help Taiwan in a proactive way or not? I mean, what do we do? And I think there's been not a lot of confidence in this administration and with his cabinet, especially if we look back to what happened in Afghanistan. The confidence level to Milley, Blinken, Mayorkas, all these guys, I mean, that's not great. There's not a lot of confidence in these guys right now, and that's not helping, at all.
Absolutely.
And so it does beg the question, what do we do from here? Is this, when does it end, and what do we need to be preparing for? But can't stress enough, though, energy independence ought to be our number one priority.
Yeah, but you're right about the Taiwan thing, because you're like, what's next? You almost see how this plays out here is going to dictate what others are going to do next. You know what I mean? And that's what we're worried about, is like, hey, if Russia does this, who's to say China's like, okay, well, they did it here, well, we're going to go take Taiwan and do, and that's what we're worried about is, all right, this is setting a precedent we don't like very much right now.
Exactly. And no doubt China's watching to see how the world is reacting and how America, and I'm just so disappointed that I feel, and I believe I'm not alone in this, I think many Americans feel this way. I think our global standing, our global ability to truly lead has diminished under this administration. I really don't think this would be happening under the Trump administration, or even another strong leader. And here's why. And Mike Pompeo said it the best. When this first started kind of going, 10 days ago, Mike Pompeo, I heard the best statement ever. He said, look, the rift between Russia and a number of countries, but Ukraine, and he said nothing on the world stage has changed. The only thing that has changed is America's administration. That's the only change, a vital change that's happened. And now we have somebody in the White House who has, rolled right into some of these agreements that Trump got us out of, who was very quiet and did not even put sanctions in place for the Nord 2 pipeline. We signaled right away, look, we're not going to be energy independent. We're going to buy oil from everybody else. We're going he signaled that we took 10 steps back instead of, and I think that's what is telling when Pompeo said that the other day. It's like, wow, that's pretty truthful. nothing on the world stage changed except the administration in the United States of America, and that's pretty telling.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, we got to go. We're hitting on the top of the hour here. I would love to talk to you some more.
Talk all day.
Yeah, we could. As always, Congresswoman, thank you very much for keeping representing us here and keeping things going on. And good luck in the next fights here. And we'll talk to you again soon. Hopefully, we got better news next time we're talking. Maybe.
I hope so. Well, and I just want to congratulate all the winners the other day from the municipal elections.
Yes.
And I look forward to coming back to district soon. I'm not there this weekend, but I'll be back next week. So
okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing everybody, and I just thank you for your time. And you just have a really blessed weekend.
You do the same, and don't work too hard, and stay healthy.
Sounds good. All right, Mike. Thanks so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Take care. Bye-bye.
You bet. Bye-bye now.
All right, that was Congresswoman Yvette Herrell. Thank you very much to her for spending time.